All right. Well, I'd like to welcome Bob Spiotto to our Italian American Stories podcast. I'm really excited to have you. Thanks for reaching out and wanting to be on our show.
Grazie, grazie. Thank you,
Th-
thank you.
yes,
Pleasure,
thank you. All right.
pleasure.
Like always, whenever I have an interview, since we're the Italian American Stories podcast, I just ask our guests to start with telling us a story about your Italian American experience, memories, whatever you'd like.
Wow, that's a big
it's
subject, a big topic.
it's a big
As you put
request.
it, yes, big, that's a whole. Well, I was going to say that's a whole show and that's a whole podcast in and of itself. Oh wait, look, here's one now.
It's mine.
Exactly. So when you asked me to start off with a little bit more of a personal story and how that Italian American weave has been a part of me, and I know you and others can relate to this very very easily. Look, I'm like third generation, so I'm removed, but that doesn't matter. I feel it in my marrow.
Yep.
There is red, white, and green in these veins, and in the right order and the whole deal. So yeah, so I've always felt that, and why is that? Well, because I was brought up, obviously, in an Italian American household, and growing up as an only child, uh, very, very supported by my parents in everything I wanted to do, all of my goals and dreams and aspirations. Of course, I also had my grandparents, my mother's parents, and of course, I'm coming to you from Long Island, although I was born and bred in Queens, Queens, New York, which was also a very, very Italian area.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
Grew up in an Italian neighborhood, moved up east a bit in Queens, certainly from Flushing, if anybody listening might recognize that. But I used to visit my grandparents every Wednesday. We had pasta, yes, we did. My grandmother used to use a lot of little Italian slang words, and I used to pick all of that up. So I came to just know and understand what that meant to be. Um, of course, growing up, a very, very, I'm not going to say a tremendous family, but large enough. Certainly, as a kid growing up, it felt like a large family.
Sure.
Always together on the holidays. Big surprise. Always, myself, and a couple of my cousins were always at the kids' table. Yes, at the
Yeah.
kids' table. I still have and took from my grandparents and has traveled with me that kids table.
Oh,
It's a wood with kind of almost like a formica like treated wood top,
I can picture
and
it.
it's here in my office. It's
Oh,
got
cool.
folding wood legs and the four chairs and I have it here in my office. So it
Uh,
has traveled with me, and it's just special because we used to sit around at that table during the holidays while the adults were what, 3 feet from us at the other table in a
Yep.
crowded apartment. You know, we've always been crowded, but we never mind, and we still don't
Sure.
mind. And the family has grown exponentially over the years, and cousins, and they're still adding to the family. Um, my grandparents, obviously on both my mother's side and father's side, have passed.
Hmm.
My grandmother on my mother's side earlier. I think she passed when she was in her late 60s. My grandfather lived to just about 99, which is
Wow.
amazing. So I had him for such a long time, and he was incredible. Um, and on my father's side, that grandmother passed quite early, and my grandfather lived, but he wound up moving to Florida. So we didn't have a real relationship. But um, my father passed several years ago. My mother is still here, but not unfortunately all,
Mm,
which has become a bit of a burden. And unfortunately, we can't share the stories because she can't remember them, but we can
yeah.
share a lot of laughs. And for me, being a bit of a commedia dell'arte character in real life, humor has played such an important part in our family tradition, no
Oh,
question.
nice.
And my father was always a jokester as well. So, but yeah, we have always taken pride. my mother, bless her, whenever we would go shopping, if she ever saw anything, even if it was, one of these, wireless mouses, if on the back it said "Made in Italy," that was it. We would have to buy it. You'd have to probably buy 2 or 3. Why? Well, because she'd need one, I would need one, and it's good to have gifts for other people in the family.
That's right.
Cleaning out stuff in that house right now, there is a room full of emergency gifts, as I like to call them. So many things made in Italy, made in Italy, made in Italy. But
Oh, cool.
it brings me a certain comfort, and I love sharing that with other people. Where I work now as the director of events and clubhouse manager at an upscale over 55 development on Long Island, we created with my support and my papal blessing here, the Amici Italian American Cultural Club.
Oh, nice.
So there are a group of Italians, and not just Italians. We have Jewish people in that club. We have Indian people in that club. We have Irish, which is not that far a stretch.
Yeah.
But it's great. And we've done a lot of wonderful Italian American events. I just did one of my events not long ago for them. And so in my own way and over the years, working very, very closely with the Italian Trade Commission, with the Order Sons of Italy in America, with the Commission on Social Justice, and I've received awards from many of those, which I'm always so proud of. And look, we know that the Italian Americans are not always the easiest group to work with. It takes a lot of patience and a lot of follow-up and a lot of follow-through, but we get there. But we do get there eventually. So the Italian American traditions with regard to that have been, do I speak Italian? Enough that I can get through and make it sound good. I think I understand a little more than I speak. I took Italian in high school. I don't remember a lot of it. Went to Italy once, would love to go back, but that was years ago when I was in high school with my family.
Oh, nice.
That's one thing we did a lot of as a family. We did, go to places together. So between my mother and my father and myself, the three of us were a very tight-knit trio. And, we're very much then a part of a very loving and still supportive family.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that you have the table. I think I'm in my podcast room right now and I have family memorabilia everywhere. It's so important to keep that. You and I actually have a lot in common. I think I'm 4th generation.
Okay.
And I'm also an only child. But I understand what you're saying about how that, even though it's far removed, it lives in me,
Right?
I mean, it really does. I was culturally raised that way. My mom and my grandfather, who I called Papa, they kept those traditions alive. And even though we're 3rd or 4th generation, that thread is still there because of our family members. They kind of connect us to those people that came over. So I completely understand what you're saying there. And supportive parents. I mean, my mom does the podcast with me and it's great.
Yeah.
So what part of Italy is your family from?
So a combination of Lucca, which is fairly well known, and Naples.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's the combination there. And my father always told me that at one point when there was some tracing of history and ancestry that supposedly, excuse me, somebody on the Spiotto side was, I don't know, a big deal at the port of Naples.
Oh.
I don't know what, and I don't know what he did. I don't know if he oversaw operations there or if he just worked there. And, I haven't had a chance to do what I know many people have done, which is really trace that ancestry to find who is there. On my mother's side, supposedly there was a tracing back to the name of Grimaldi, not Garibaldi, which I have a very odd theatrical connection to, which we could talk about. And Grimaldi, Joe Grimaldi, was a very, very famous clown.
Oh.
So when I learned of that, it wasn't that difficult for me to say, okay, maybe there's a real connection there. Uh, because this buffo here is definitely got that element, no question.
Oh,
And
that's great.
yeah, so and at some point it probably would be fun to do. It's just a matter of finding the time to do it and then discovering. But I could see myself getting caught up in it to the level of distraction.
Oh, 100%. It's a project, but it
Did you do
is
it?
addicting. I have done pretty extensive. I've got a few things that I still haven't been able to figure out. And
Right.
between that and the podcast and full-time job and family, it's
Yeah.
certain things have to take the back burner at times, but it is
Yeah.
fascinating to research. And I think researching back to Italy, I found sometimes you were talking about how you can understand Italian a little bit
Yeah.
better than you can speak it. So I
Right.
feel like sometimes I can read it better
Mm.
than anything else.
You're absolutely right. And with some of my theatrical performances where I've been able to work the language in, I've always tried to do that, and I feel like I get it, and I'm
Yeah,
able to pronounce it. Oh, probably because I approach it from a very theatrical standpoint, so it works. So it
sure.
works. And knock wood, people are usually very impressed, and they'll say to me, "Oh my God, Bob, your Italian is great." I say, grazie, grazie mille. Oh, thank you so much. And that's wonderful. Meanwhile, yes, I do understand what I've said in a given instance. Same thing with Yiddish. I speak Yiddish better than some of the Jewish people I'm around here.
Oh, wow.
And I think it's because of the approach from a more theatrical, performance like standpoint that makes it
Sure.
work.
That makes sense.
Convincing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So speaking of your theatrical performances, why don't we dive into that? Because I was reading all of the stuff that you sent me, and my goodness, you have quite the background in theater, everything of theater. So do you want to dive on into that and tell our listeners about that?
Well, or do you want to ask me a specific question? Because I almost don't even know where to start because
Well, I saw that you, in one of the articles you sent me, you've been into it since elementary. That was kind of your like kicking off point. So, what was the inspiration to get you? Was there one specific thing, or was it just in you and something brought it out?
I think it was just in me. I think if there's anything to be said about fate and the stars and the almighty plan and what he and others have in store for us, there's no question that this is and was kind of meant to be, right? So,
Sure.
growing up, I go back to the class clown. I go back to, wanting to be involved in things and doing things as far back as, elementary school. I don't remember my claims to fame in kindergarten, but I certainly remember them from elementary school and being in the school chorus and being in the band and auditioning for the shows and being in as many shows as I could. And that just kept going. It kept going and growing and evolving. I thought I would be a performer first and foremost. I had that dream. That dream came true and continues to come true on certain levels, but it also then branched out so that I kept reinventing myself in many, many ways so that not only could I continue to be a performer and a performer slash creator, but that I could always be creating, whether it was producing, directing, managing, overseeing, uh, working with other people, serving as a master of ceremonies. I've started doing all of these bingo events lately, and they're like stand-up comedy with bingo. So they've been branded as Bingo with Bob, and they're very, very popular and fun. Who would have thunk, right? But there was so much going on in elementary school. I then wound up. I was the only male in the all-female dance school in Flushing, Queens, for many, many years, and learned so much. And one of my incredible mentors, who is no longer with us but is within me, she was such an inspiration, and I was doing shows with her and helping her, and I learned so much from her. And I was featured in many ways. And as a Leo, born under the sign of Leo and a blazing sun sign here, as my wife always reminds me, it ain't easy to be living with a Leo. We like to shine, we like to soar, and we like
Sure.
to, we like to spread that. And I'm always thinking about how I can inspire others and conspire to inspire and sometimes perspire while but it's okay. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
And so that was elementary school, then high school, same thing. I was still taking guitar lessons and flute lessons and auditioning for all the shows in the all Catholic elementary school, Catholic high school, Catholic graduate school.
Oh, wow.
I went from St. Andrews to Holy Cross High School, and then with a small break in between, and then eventually to the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., where I got a Master of Fine Arts in Directing. And
Oh,
I was
wow.
directing and teaching and then I wound up coming back to my alma mater where they created a position for me, and I worked there for almost 23 years, directing and producing and just doing everything in my realm to keep my art alive in whatever way I could. And I am so thankful, and I am grateful every day that I'm able to do what I love, and in so many unique, interesting ways.
Oh, for sure. Actually, speaking of interesting ways, I have a quote of yours
that was a great segue. What a great word.
Yeah. I mean, you opened that door right for me, so I'm gonna take advantage of it. So I was reading the article that you sent me about Barnum's P.T. Barnum, and somebody said that it was like a history lecture and acting because you were giving facts. And then you said, my goal is to feel like I'm doing justice to those individuals. I'm keeping them alive. And for me, because those two things really spoke to me, because obviously with my podcast, I kind of like to research those unknown individuals and bring them back to life. I always kind of give the example of DiMaggio. His story will be around forever. Yeah. Somebody in 100 years could Google or whatever's around then and find out about Joe DiMaggio. So talk to me about that, because that really resonated with me. I thought that was a really cool something that you said. So
again, going back to the ever so grateful and ever so fortunate and ever so blessed topic, which I feel more and more every day, unlike I've ever felt it before, I think. And maybe that just comes with getting older. I don't know. You take it for granted when you're young and you just do what you do. Mm-hmm. But I think that these one character shows, these one-man presentations, these characters portrayed by another character have kind of come to me. I almost feel like they've been seeking me out, like they eventually come to find me, and then, I don't necessarily think of these ideas. The idea is planted, and then I go with it. So years ago, and I don't even remember, but I was asked to participate in what was the first, what was going to be annual, but they only did it twice. P.T. Barnum Festival out in the Hamptons, and I wound up being asked because I was involved with an organization when I was living out in that general vicinity on the east end of Long Island years ago. And I thought, oh my God, I would love that. And of course, I immediately dove into my research on P.T. Barnum, only to find what little I knew was very little.
Sure.
There is so much to know about this man, and an all-American and a showman, actually, I just booked that one-man show again, and I'm doing it right before his birthday out in East Hampton.
Oh, cool.
He spent time and lived in West Hampton, which was why they did this festival. So, of course, I dressed up, I led the parade, and I created that one-man show about P.T. Barnum. And, of course, Barnum has been on the minds of people lately because of The Greatest Showman movie, which was, a Hollywood version, although there's some fact and there's some fiction, and
sure.
That's okay. But now there's going to be a Greatest Showman 2. There's going to be a Broadway show version of that. The circus is back, but without the animals.
Yeah.
But so I kind of try to, and I'm not an impersonator. I know people who are. I've worked with incredible actors who can impersonate, but I just try to embody a spirit the best I can. And I surround myself with a lot of stuff. I like stuff because I think stuff helps set a mood and a tone. I mean, I have residents who come here just to visit my office just because of the stuff that I have. And that's fine. But so I have memorabilia and props and set pieces and things I use, and I try to incorporate music and again, try to bring the spirit of the character to life so that people feel like they've somehow met these individuals. And you saw from the resume I sent you, there's been a very, very unique list.
Yeah.
You mentioned P.T. Barnum. I'll shift out of the American group and I'll take this cue from you with some of the Italian Americans. I'll start with a very one that I've just recently been doing again, called Art Words, which is the poetry of Michelangelo.
Mm.
And it's his birthday this year, 550 years old.
Wow.
And that spirit is still going strong, and we know the work and the art that he has left us.
Oh,
But
for sure.
not a lot of people know about the poetry, so it's a poetry and performance presentation. There's a narrative. I dress very appropriately. I surround myself with columns. I have a huge reproduction of the Sistine Chapel that I hang behind.
Oh my gosh.
Inspiration. The stage is full of candles, not real candles, because I want that light of inspiration to be there, because it's a celebration this year, especially considering it's a birthday. But I couldn't litter the stage with 550 candles.
Yeah.
So I have probably 50. But that's been very moving and, as I like to say, edutaining for people.
Oh, I love that.
They're educated, but they're also entertained.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a nice combination. The recipe works well, at least for me.
Sure.
And my formula of what I do. So from the Italian American perspective, that's been a good one. It's been kind of coming back. I did it many years ago. I just did it twice. And I'm hoping to book it again soon. Giuseppe Garibaldi, who was a name that I'm sure many Italians and Italian Americans know. I mean, that's the father of modern Italy, really.
Sure.
No question. And I don't remember, I think it's because there was an Italian American lecture series when I was working at Hofstra, and I think we were paying some type of tribute to Italy. And I thought, when I read about him, and I only needed a little information, and then I started to look and I thought, oh boy, can I bring this character to life? I even let the beard grow out more.
Oh.
I had the full outfit made for me. And the year that I did that, that was the same year that one of the big Italian American organizations in the New York area was celebrating a big anniversary of Garibaldi. So I led the Columbus Day Parade.
Oh, cool.
Members of the Garibaldi Guard.
Wow.
Sword in hand. I mean, the whole deal.
Oh my gosh, so cool.
That was a lot of fun. And I just booked, finally, after all these years, there's a Garibaldi Meucci museum in Staten Island where Garibaldi lived.
Yep.
My show is called Garibaldi's Gotham. The focus of the show is about his time in New York, which is fascinating. And he lived with Meucci.
Yeah.
If not for Meucci, we wouldn't have,
our telephones. Yep.
Eventually this. It led to this, but
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, kudos to Alexander Graham Bell, but okay. I think his press agent was maybe just a little bit better. He had a better publicity man.
Yeah.
So that's a fun show. And I have wonderful recorded music and stories and quotes and newspaper articles. And it's just, again, edutaining. Then there is the Leonardo da Vinci piece that I do.
Oh, wow.
Enough said.
Mm-hmm.
Some things from the notebooks, writing, poetry, quotes, things that other people have said about him. So it's a very unique and interesting historical perspective. I'm not an art historian, okay? I'm not an art scholar. I leave that to those that can do presentations and lectures on that. I want to get more into the person and the personality and that. Because to me, that's, for me, and that works for me.
Oh, I love it. I think that's great.
And then an interesting combination of an Italian Jew who survived the Holocaust, and is certainly very, very well known in literary circles, Primo Levi.
Okay.
And I created a one-man show about him, which again was based on the poetry and some of his writings. That is a very, very, it's a serious piece, but I always try to bring out the lightness also and find the humor in a lot of this.
Sure.
Because it's a heavy topic. It's a heavy topic. Because it does obviously touch on elements of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
But from an Italian American perspective, and I was just moved by his writings and his poetry, and I have found that I have an ability, I guess, if you will, and I'm grateful for it, to really bring poetry to life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't sit down and read poetry. I like to perform poetry.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are people that love to sit, with a cup of tea on a porch somewhere with a warm breeze and read poetry. But for me, I feel like I can bring poetry to people in a different way, especially if it becomes more of a theatrical performance. So I've been fortunate to do that with several different characters. So I think those are the main. The other Italian American that is a musical one is Salvatore Guaragna. Salvatore Guaragna. Okay. Now, people are going to say, who? Who's that? I never heard. Is he a classical? No. Salvatore Guaragna changed his name shortly after he started school in Brooklyn. Now, anybody listening to this who's from Brooklyn is probably going, hey, Brooklyn, right? The name he changed, the one that became very famous and well known, was Harry Warren.
Oh.
Harry Warren wrote well over 1,000 songs, and many that are probably still sitting in the bottom of a trunk yet to be discovered, which were used during the 20s. It started early 20s into 30s, but definitely into the 40s and 50s and even into the 60s for the movies.
Oh my gosh.
He was up in the top 3, along with Irving Berlin and Cole Porter and the Gershwins. I mean, this man, and you're talking about songs that everybody knows. All the songs from the movie 42nd Street and the musical 42nd Street. I Only Have Eyes for You, At Last, which Etta James had a big hit with, Lullaby of Broadway, on the Atchison, Topeka, and the Santa Fe. And the list just goes, Jeepers Creepers, where'd you get those peepers?
Yeah.
Songs that were recorded by countless names during that period and are still being recorded today by the likes of Lady Gaga, Michael Bublé, so many others. And of course, my show is called That's Amore, a musical tribute to Harry Warren, Mr. Hollywood Musical, because he was.
Yeah.
Now, when I try to book that show, people say to me, oh, that show sounds wonderful. We'd love a show about Dean Martin.
Oh, it's like, well,
not so much. Yes, Dean Martin had a big hit with that. Little did I know that I now count as a friend and a colleague Dean's daughter, Dina Martin, who I got when I was at the Friars Club in New York. But yeah, I explained to them it's not about Dean Martin. Although behind me on a big giant blow up as my backdrop amidst all the other sheet music blow ups is the sheet music cover from That's Amore with Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis, who I also had the pleasure and honor to meet and work with on a few occasions.
Oh, wow. How cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I love doing that show. I have a fabulous musical director, Peter Pace, who I've worked with on many, many of these musical shows. And we love doing the That's Amore because it's just entertaining. And I tell the stories of the songs and the inside stories and all the different people that Harry worked with. And when I did this show years ago in New York for what was then called the New York Sheet Music Society, a friend I got to know by the name of Debbie Whiting, who's the daughter of Margaret Whiting, the famous Margaret Whiting, who, of course, was the daughter of Richard Whiting, who wrote such memorable songs as On the Good Ship Lollipop. Debbie came to see that show that I did at the New York Sheet Music Society. And she was there with this woman who had this blonde hair and striking eyes and just very theatrical looking. And I didn't think anything of it until after the show. And Margaret came up to me, and Debbie came up to me and said, "Oh my God, Bob, I'm so glad I came. The show was great. This was wonderful. And I'd like you to introduce you to my dear friend." So before she could say her name, she said to me, she took my hand and she said to me, she said, "Bob, I want to tell you." She said, "This was incredible." She said, "No one has done anything like this to pay tribute, and such an amazing, loving tribute to my grandfather as you just did." And I'm getting it
Wow.
now. And it was Julia Riva, Harry's granddaughter.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, it was just amazing to me. And I have that beautiful picture of the three of us. And I love to tell that story when I do the show, which makes, it makes it so much more personal. Same thing happens with my Danny Kaye show, my Joel Grey show. Joel Grey, of course, is still with us. He's going to be 93. What is it, next week? Yeah, a week from this coming Friday. Joel Grey will be
Wow.
93. Yeah. And I still do those shows, and I do some other Broadway style reviews. I'm working on a new show about the man who wrote The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, cool.
Because I thought that the appropriateness of that would be, and because he has impacted so many people, but everybody knows The Wizard of Oz, but do they know the man?
Sure.
L. Frank Baum. And I thought that would be a very interesting story. I am a firm believer that I have an old soul.
Mm-hmm.
And that I've probably been reincarnated somehow, and have done a lot of other reincarnations. And just yesterday, my wife, who was taking her own spiritual journey, told me that she asked her guides how many incarnations are kind of behind me that I keep going through. And it was over 7,700.
Oh my gosh.
So I've got a lot of,
that's like almost unfathomable.
I mean, that's like a double mic drop. If you had two, you'd have to drop both.
Exactly.
And I guess maybe in some way I feel it. Maybe I feel it.
Yeah, and that's why you can resonate with that.
I guess
the individuals.
I think so.
And what a compliment. Whenever you get something, especially from a family member, when you've performed, or for even me, when I tell a story and a family member reaches out, when I sometimes I'll see the emails about the person and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this going to be like? But when it's a compliment, it's the biggest thing, and it's the best part.
I mean, I always like to say, good reviews are always great.
Yeah.
Because it's, aside from the fact that they're good and they're positive, they really do mean a lot. Somebody took the time. And, of course, after every show, people come up to me and I'm trying to clean things up. And I mean, it's amazing to hear what people say. And over the years, knock wood, and I'm, again, so grateful, people have followed me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have groupies, and they admit it. They even admit it. They'll say, "Bob, where we're stalking you, or where you're groupies." And that's just so, it's just such an amazing tribute. And I just, that means so much to be able to have that kind of impact on people.
Definitely. Kind of reaffirms what you're doing.
Oh my God. Yeah. In so many ways, and I've been kind of reinvigorated again, to reinvent myself again over and over in the past few years in many ways. Not that it ever went, flatlined. There was always a pulse. But there's been this resurgence, and the universe has been cooperating, and I've been manifesting things like crazy, and it's amazing. I mean, it's just wonderful.
That is.
And it just leads to more creative projects and networking with more people. Hello.
Hi.
Look at this, right? I mean,
that
alone, that wouldn't have happened if not for Daniela Maria Fosco.
Yes, and she's amazing.
She is amazing.
Yeah.
And other people that she's put me in touch with, and I've tried to put her in touch with people, and I've been connecting with more Italian-American organizations. I think I might hopefully be doing something at the Columbus Citizens Foundation in New York City. That's the group that oversees the parade and has done so forever. The new Italian American Museum that just opened to somewhat great acclaim down in Little Italy in New York. I have a contact there and a colleague there, and I'm trying to bring one of my shows to them as well. It's
Nice.
So yeah, so I think I've given you. I mean, there's so much more. You know, and that one email I sent you, I created my Spiotto Italian American connection with all the various things I've done over the years that have an Italian American connection. Some of them, I revisit that list every once in a while, and I think, oh my God, I forgot all about that.
Well, no, go ahead. I'm sorry. You go ahead.
Say that there was an article in the paper here on Long Island recently about one of our local Italian American Sons of Italy lodges, the John Michael Marino Lodge, which is located in beautiful Port Washington. And I was moved by the story about this young soldier who was one of the first Italian Americans from that area that unfortunately was killed in battle, and he was very, very young. And for some reason, when I read that article, immediately, there was not even a pause in my marrow or in my mind or my soul that said, I need to create a little one-man tribute to this young man, but I want to create it as if I'm John Michael Marino at this age, older, revisiting my younger self through my older self.
Oh, I love that. That's really creative.
So, because I had to find a premise with which to do it, because I don't look like a 20-year-old kid, and I don't want to try to portray that. Vocally, I can give you a youthful energy, but so my wheels were turning so fast, you know, I felt like I was on an internal roller coaster, going every which way. And then when I spoke to the woman and I pitched her on this idea from the lodge, she absolutely loved it. So I created a brief treatment and I gave her a proposal, and I think it's going to happen.
That's amazing.
That may only be done once.
Yeah.
Maybe twice, because it's so specific to that lodge and that. But at the same time, if I feel like it's kind of a meant to be, then it's time, creative time, soul time, well spent.
Yeah. And you can bring that person's story back to life.
Yeah. But those people who clearly, as Italian Americans, take great pride in their community and the fact that they named the lodge after that young man.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I completely understand. It's amazing. And I love bringing, because, you know, we live in a very connected world, but we still have some separation. You know, I'm in Colorado. I was born and raised in Colorado. And so bringing your stories and, you know, your local area to listeners more out west. And I think that kind of stuff is great too. Like you were talking about the networking part. You know,
I mean, and I've had some luck without necessarily trying to find shows and places. I mean, look, I have performed in the tri-state area, you know, and I've been very fortunate with that. But most of it is in, you know, I like to say I've been from Manhattan to Montauk, which is a pretty big span. Right? And it's true, and I have. But I've also been in Jersey. I've been in Connecticut. You know, people say to me all the time, Bob, you should go to Florida. You should bring your shows to Florida. Well, that's a lot of work. It's a big commitment. And I have a full-time job, plus all these other projects.
Oh, yeah.
But I connected with someone, and I wound up going and doing a very fun show, which was about Jewish American composers who had written Academy Award-winning songs. And I worked with a female, and she was down in that particular area where we did it. And I wound up going to Georgia for a couple of days and doing it as part of a festival. So I'm always open to being contacted by anybody who says, you know what, how can we make this work? How can we get you on a plane with some of your stuff and get you out here to do one of these shows? Because we think it would be, you know, I'm always open to the possibilities. Let's put it that way.
Oh, for sure. That's awesome. Yeah. So what is, I mean, you've talked about a lot of future projects, but what is one that you are really looking forward to?
Oh,
I
You
have
know,
big
I did
requests on my show.
yeah, that's a biggie. Well, here's the thing, and people, when people ask me about, well, what's your favorite this or what's your favorite that, that's so hard to answer
It
because
is.
they're all, you can have a lot of favorites. Just like
Yeah.
you love a lot of people in the world and in your family and amongst your friends, and I love and I love revisiting some of these projects. Somebody comes to me and says, "Ooh, I looked at the list because I'm pretty sure I sent you what I call my cast of characters,
You
right?
did.
It's a listing of a lot of the shows and presentations I do, and I'm trying to vary some of those presentations, and again, make some of them, part lecture, part music, part performance, the whole combination of things. But a friend of mine who I did a short film for, which won a bunch of awards several years ago. He reached out to me recently, and the film it's not your typical mob film, and I'll
Hmm.
just say that because we know there are mixed feelings within the Italian American community that sometimes Italian Americans get a bad rep and a bad rap because people think of them as all mobsters and criminals and mafia and okay, well, here's the thing. As the late Pat Cooper, fabulous comedian, used to say, MAFIA stands for the Mothers and Fathers Italian American Organization. MAFIA, all right? It's
Yeah,
family, okay? All right. What ethnic group has not had their dealings with the law and maybe done things that maybe they're not so proud of? Okay.
sure.
Here's the thing. This script that Frank has written, which has some Queens connections, and he asked me to play one of the little mobsters who's part of a crew with a main man who wants to get out of the life and he wants to become a stand-up comic.
Oh,
That's all he wants
nice.
to do now. And that's the premise of the story. We did a reading in New York at the Dolby Theater. There were a whole group of producers there and TV people, and we've been going back and forth because there are people that want to shoot it. They may want to make a movie out of it. They may want to do a short series, a limited series. So it could be TV, it could be film. So I may find myself in the next couple of months going out to LA for a few days to be a part of this shoot, whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
That's exciting. That's
That is,
exciting.
I love that. I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think I could picture that being so funny.
Right? Yeah. And somebody who wants to get out of the life, I mean, it's not the same as some of the kinds of films that De Niro has done where, he kind of takes a similar premise and kind of moves it around, and analyze this and analyze that, also have elements of that story. But there's
Yeah,
humor there, and Frank has written a beautiful script because there's a lot about family in there as well,
it
which
is.
which is moving. And
Wait,
some of what he wrote is incredibly moving. So there's a real story there, which appealed to me when he sent the script to me and asked me to read it. And so we'll see what happens with that.
yeah.
And my ongoing bookings, and who knows what's in store. Don't know what else is coming down the line or what may
Yep.
inspire me to do something or work on something. Strangely enough, I've always been drawn to stories and people and experiences within the Jewish American community as well. And I've had a great deal of experience playing Jewish roles, Jewish American roles. Those things like that have always appealed to me. And who knows? Like I say, who knows what else may yet come along and inspire me? There's probably something I'm forgetting at the moment.
Well, I mean, that creative process is always changing, developing, reforming itself. So, well, where can our listeners, how can they follow you and keep up with all of the amazing things that you're
So
doing?
something I'm trying to do finally, and I'm embarrassed to admit it, but I will, here for your millions of people, is that I am finally trying to put a website together after all these years. I have never had a website. And I want to do it because I have so many photos, so many reviews, a lot of interesting information. Like when I send things to be booked, newspaper articles and reviews and letters and just all sorts of stuff, which can very nicely fill a website. There's no
Oh,
question.
sure.
And be very interesting. And again, allow me the opportunity to engage in a different way, which I haven't been. Right
Yeah.
now, people find me via Facebook. It's
Okay.
very easy to find Bob Spiotto, and they'll see this face. And I'm always open to, there's nothing hidden there. They can, message me and say, I saw you or I heard about you and, things of that nature, which is fine. It's pretty easy to try to kind of cut through all the spam and all the crazy stuff that everybody gets on Facebook these days, which is a pain in the neck to deal with.
Oh, man, it really is.
So, I mean, I think one of my biggest fans is somebody by the name of Potential Spam, because that person is calling me all the time.
Oh, yeah, they're my
when
biggest ones too.
I look at my phone and go, oh, look, it's Potential. It's Potential again.
Yeah. Mr. Spam is calling again.
Oh my God, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think one day I forget what I posted one day. I was in the store and I was walking down an aisle. I forget where I was, and I saw a can of Spam.
Uh-huh.
So I took a picture of it and I posted it. And where you can add something on Facebook, I just, in big letters, I wrote potential and then a picture of Spam.
Yep. Oh, it's exhausting. It's so crazy.
So draining. But yes, I can be found. I ain't hiding. I'm not hiding. I want to be found, like the song says,
Perfect.
and yes, I would love to hear from people and connect with people who have other interesting stories to tell or inspirational stories. And again, I love when I do my shows and people come up to me and say, oh, I was in a show with this one, or I knew Danny Kaye or my parents, or they'll bring me pictures. Sometimes people even bring me memorabilia. They bring me more stuff for my collection, and I've amassed a big collection, and so it's just been great. Oh, one other quickly, and I'm sorry, taking up way too much time.
No, you're fine.
I was asked to do a project and become Giovanni da Verrazzano, the famous Verrazzano of the bridge. Okay.
Oh, yes.
But so much more, because he was an incredible discoverer and explorer, and what an interesting story. And one of my scholarly colleagues, who happens to be the director and a real theater person for many years, was at the University of Michigan, and is the library director of programs at the library in Montauk. She's booked me for many of my programs. But Carolyn Balducci is, as you can imagine, a proud Italian American who loves doing things that have an Italian-American, residence and pay tribute in some way. So last year, 2024, was a big anniversary for Verrazzano. And there were some celebrations going on here and there. And she found a letter and then put several letters together and had them translated about his explorations and how he sailed right past the east end of Long Island in Montauk and saw the Indians and the descriptions, and I mean descriptions, stuff that was very, very funny, actually, and could be funny, but also interesting and unique things, and how he talked about the soil that he saw might be perfect for planting things like potatoes and grapes to make wine. Hello.
Whoa, that is amazing.
Huge wine industry on the east end of Long Island, especially the North Fork. But so she said to me, Bob, I have this show, and the only person that can beat Verrazzano is you. So I said, well, I don't know, Carolyn. Let me think about it. Okay. So I did it. And I've done it. I've only done it twice now, but it was another very interesting piece. And again, I use my same format that works well for me. So it becomes this living, breathing monologue. And people have just sat there and listened to this, because it's not anything that they could necessarily read or hear on their own.
Yeah. So, and the history, I mean, just you talking about those letters in general. Oh my gosh, how fascinating. Yeah. That is so cool.
Yeah. So
oh, wow.
Carolyn keeps me working. She just asked me if I could do something on The Great Gatsby. I mean, this is the range we're talking about, which is also has real Long Island roots because
Sure.
this year is a big anniversary for Gatsby. And I just was able to locate a script that's already written, and it's a one-man version of The Great Gatsby.
Wow.
So I'm trying to get a hold of that to see if I can read it and see if it can work for me.
Yeah, if
Uh,
you can internalize it.
yeah, and kind of portray that character. But that's such a great period too.
Oh, yeah, it's so
20s,
fascinating.
that age. I mean, so much fun.
Oh,
That's why I feel like I have a little bit of an old soul and maybe an ancient old soul. I don't know.
I
So,
always, people ask that question, if you could have any superpower, what would it be? And mine would be time travel.
oh,
So I could just go back and view time periods because,
yeah.
oh, so fascinating.
And to end with what you said about and I've always said how these people, these characters find me.
Hmm.
Um, I things find me too. I find things find me. Props like I won't be looking for something, and if I'm in a store or who knows where I am, right? And all of a sudden there'll be something, and it'll be like, oh my God, that was waiting for me to see to add to my little collection. And I'll always say, thank you, whoever it is,
Sure.
or just in general, because I feel like the universe kind of also guides me to some of these things.
Yeah.
Because I know, and they know, whoever the big they is, or the big he or she or whoever, that I will appreciate that, and that
Yep.
will add that will give me another interesting element to whatever that particular show or whatever it is happens to be. And I've had the great good fortune of directing so many wonderful shows over the years, a lot of musicals and some more serious shows as well. But there's one show that there's a quote from Cervantes, who wrote, and I'm paraphrasing ever so slightly, about Don Quixote, who was always tilting at those windmills, who had this incredible fantasy life and was always trying to help others. Um, he Cervantes wrote through Quixote that he always want and hoped that he could always add a measure of grace to this
Mm.
world. And I'm getting a chill. Uh,
Hmm.
not because it's damp and cold out, but and I really have been reinstilling myself with that particular phrase. I've actually tried to find a piece of artwork that I really would like that has that
Yeah.
written because I want that hanging in my office.
Yeah.
Not that I can't remind myself of it, but I want a visual, but I also want others to see it.
Hmm.
Just like the sign that's outside my office now from P.T. Barnum about that his real goal in life was just to make people happy.
How
I believe,
cool.
I do. Across from me right now, I'm looking at a frame print that has just all these colors, and it simply says, life is a great big canvas. Throw all the paint on it that you can.
Oh, beautiful.
And that's a Danny Kaye quote.
Mm.
And since 2001, I've been doing my musical Danny Kaye tribute.
Oh,
I
cool.
just love and adore doing. Um, and then there's another one man show that I've started to work on, and I start it and I stop it, and I start it and I stop it. And I don't know why. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But it's called Put on a Happy Face, and it's a Dick Van Dyke celebration
Okay.
because that man has also always resonated with me, and he's done it all: radio, TV, film,
Oh,
Broadway, everything. Um, and there is a quote, although it's not attributed to him, it's attributed to a songwriter, but I have a frame print of that from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
mm.
Um, from the ashes of disaster come the roses of success.
Beautiful.
And I have that print. And I see that quote fairly often, and I think of, we've all had our trials and tribulations.
Yeah.
Life is a combination of, comedies and tragedies. It always has been, it always will be.
Oh, for sure.
And we have to be thankful for both so
We
that we can
do.
recognize the beauty of both in their own way.
Yep.
So that's always been kind of a little inspiring quote for me. But yeah, I want to find so that if there are any artists out there listening, I think other people could benefit from that Cervantes quote about adding a measure of grace to the world,
Oh,
especially now.
oh,
Especially now.
absolutely. And it's beautiful. Maybe there's an Etsy artist out there that can make that and put it up on their shop because it is a beautiful quote. And,
Right?
I feel that too, even with my stories. Because the human problems they're kind of the same throughout the decades, centuries, whatever. There's love, there's hurt, there's success and failure. It's just a different setting. And so, trying to add those stories in and bring out the positive in these Italian Americans that came over. So that Grace saying is very beautiful.
So many stories, so many stories. There's a couple of wonderful books out there for people to look at, and I've got a few on my Italian shelf that has a lot of interesting things on it. Big surprise, right?
Yeah.
Um, I've also wanted, and others have done this, but I kind of want to do it at some point. I want to do a presentation on the Italian American singers. Uh,
Mm.
and I could probably do a few songs, which is fine, but I also want to talk about them, and I want to talk about their lives and interesting things. There's the Italian American inventors. That's a whole separate topic. That's a whole
Yeah.
separate topic right there. And you mentioned Joe DiMaggio, and I'm trying to remember if it was Joe DiMaggio or Phil Rizzuto, two Italian American baseball legends.
Yeah.
I think it was Joe DiMaggio that was indeed involved with the invention of the famous Mr. Coffee machine, if I remember correctly.
Oh, how
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
And see, I like how you said, bring that story of that person because they have a face and a front as a singer or a baseball player, but there's a
right.
whole story behind them that most people don't necessarily know.
Don't know. And I'm a big, and I'd like to see more. And this is what, thankfully, you, who I am now grateful for. This is wonderful.
Yeah,
Grateful
this
to
is
know
great.
you, and it's connected thanks to Danielle. But Danielle, in her own way, is also trying to add a very physical and very exciting measure of grace to the world through all of her amazing dance and the
Absolutely.
stories, the family stories, the ritual stories of the women and the dance and the just incredible, and the tarantella and how that dates back, and the spider and the medicinal and the spiritual.
Yep.
And to listen to her, and when we met that day and she and I spoke, oh my God, I think 2 hours went like that. Just, just talking about all of these stories and the power of the past, and
Yeah.
just pulling it right up into the present and the energy that it has.
Absolutely. You and I were talking before we hit record about Italian American stories and how you said something like it'll probably resonate with you. You've probably heard it before, but it's true. But I think we all have different versions of the story. And even if you think about storytelling, so you storytell, Danielle storytells, I storytell. And so that's a common thread that keeps us connected. But your thread has different colors or a different texture, a different pattern than mine versus Danielle's. And I think that's a fascinating about Italian American culture is we have that thread, but it looks so different. I mean, she tells stories through dance and physical, and you through your theatrical, and me through research and writing, physical writing. And I find that in my stories as well. I'll have a story of somebody who's in Alaska versus New York, but there's still a common thread of what makes that family or that person an Italian American, which is so fascinating.
Exactly.
Yep.
No question. And you do find that in other cultures too,
Sure.
but that's okay because other cultures can feel just as proud of their own as we can of ours.
Absolutely.
And you said something so incredible there is that it's that thread.
Mm-hmm.
That's why that thread also should bring all cultures together.
Yes.
in diversity, there is university,
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
And that, and when I worked all those years at Hofstra University, one of the things I loved about being there was all of that creative energy with students and it constantly changing, evolving, and working with, so many scholars and teachers and getting to do so many things creative,
Yeah.
both as performer and director and producer. And I was so excited to be there when we started and created our yearly Italian American festivals that in some cases were several day events and were cultural, very, very cultural. Uh,
Yeah.
and they were edutaining as well, obviously. So that was always very, very exciting. So yeah, I've always felt that. And, anytime I get a call, from any Italian American or anybody that says, we heard about this show, or we understand you did this show. Could you come and do it for us? Or we have an Italian American women's group or a men's group or a lodge or this or that. That there's always a little extra added.
Yay!
Yay, exactly.
Yep.
I mean, and I love to do it in general, and but when it's, that Italian American, that's got that extra bit of sauce on it.
It sure does.
It's
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah. Well, Bob, thank you so much for coming
Oh, thank
on. This has
you.
been wonderful. I'm really glad that we were able to connect. And thank you, Danielle. If you are listening, we
Yes,
really
thank you.
appreciate it.
So nice, such a pleasure. So grateful to connect with you and meet you, and I hope that everybody listening gets some fun and some laughs out of all of this. And I would love to hear from anybody.
Absolutely. Well, I will link your Facebook page in the show notes. And
Thank you so much.
absolutely. All right, Bob. Well, thank you so much.
Grazie, grazie.
Have a great
Ciao.
day.